North Korea has fired missiles before, but this time, says Japan, it's different. 4 missiles were launched, all of them coming down in the Sea of Japan. They were fired from the Tongchang-ri region, near the North's border with China. After flying for about 1,000 kilometers, they landed in waters off Japan's northwest coast. 3 of the missiles landed in Japan's exclusive economic zone, which extends 350 kilometers from its coastline.
The United States and Japan have strongly condemned North Korea's missile launch, calling it a violation of the UNSC resolutions. Washington reaffirmed its security commitment to the allies as well, and Beijing called for restraint on all sides to prevent escalating tension. For more on the international response, let's turn to our Oh Jung-hee.
The United States and Japan were quick to condemn the launch. U.S. State Department acting spokesperson Mark Toner said it violates UN Security Council resolutions which prohibit the regime from using ballistic missile technology. He urged the North to refrain from provocative actions and inflammatory rhetoric and to make a strategic choice to fulfill its international obligations and return to the denuclearization talks. Toner also added that America's commitment to defend its allies such as South Korea and Japan remains ironclad. He emphasized that the 3 countries are prepared to make full use of their capabilities to counter the growing threat from North Korea. Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe strongly denounced the launch, noting that 3 out of the 4 projectiles landed in waters within Japan's exclusive economic zone. Abe stressed that the North Korean threat has risen to a new level.
This launch has clearly indicated that North Korea poses a new level of threat. The launches are clearly in violation of Security Council resolutions, which we will not tolerate. We have strongly rebuked North Korea.
He added that Japan will work with the U.S. and South Korea to come up with countermeasures. An official from the Japanese Defense Ministry was also quoted by Tokyo-based Kyodo News Agency, calling Monday's launch, quote, an act of violence that will only deepen the North's isolation. But he also reportedly expressed concerns that the North's launches are becoming more and more accurate. As for China, the North's main ally, its statement shared the view that North Korea should not violate UN resolutions, saying there are clear rules. But at the same time, China called on South Korea, the U.S. and North Korea to exercise restraint.
China has also noticed that at the moment, the United States and South Korea are carrying out large-scale military drills aimed at North Korea. In the present situation, all sides should exercise restraint and not do anything to irritate each other to worsen regional tensions.
The German Chancellor has criticized Turkey's president for comparing rally bans to Nazism, saying there's no reason for Germany to be reproached. Turkish ministers organized rallies to seek support for a constitutional referendum in Turkey in April. And President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said Germany's decision to ban them was undemocratic. There are, of course, around 1.5 million Turkish citizens living in Germany. The 2 countries' foreign ministers expected to meet next week over the dispute. Let's go to our reporter Iris Spitzer, who's been taking a closer look at this for us from Berlin.
Anytime that the Nazi period and the Nazi government is invoked, that will often provoke a strong reaction here in Germany, both among politicians as well as the public. So the reaction has, as you can imagine, mostly been negative. Some people very upset that these comments were made. We did finally hear from Chancellor Angela Merkel's spokesperson, and he also said that he rejected those comments and also talked about kind of the overall situation here, the relationship between Germany and Turkey, and that is a relationship that has been strained in recent weeks, both by the cancellation of these scheduled rallies as well as the detention of a German-Turkish journalist. So he referenced all of those things in responding to those Nazi comments, but also stressed the need to kind of right the relationship because Turkey and Germany are, of course, important NATO allies, have economic ties, as well as the about 3 million 3 million people of Turkish descent who live in Germany, and about 1.5 million of those, as you mentioned, are eligible to vote in Turkey. So very close ties between the 2 countries, but a severe strain on the relationship at the moment, it seems.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he will meet the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Thursday. He indicated that he will voice Israel's opposition to Iran's attempts to establish a permanent military foothold in Syria. He said he also hopes to reach an understanding with Russia to reduce possible frictions between the two sides. Russia is seen as holding the balance of power in achieving a deal on Syria's future. 2 years ago, Israel and Russia agreed to coordinate military action in Syria to avoid accidentally trading fire. But on Friday, the first UN-led peace talks in a year ended in Geneva without a breakthrough.
In nearly a year that anger has increased, particularly after a popular militant leader was killed last July. And after that, when the government forces resumed counterinsurgency operations against the militants fighting against Indian rule, we've seen that every time such a gun battle happens, such an encounter or clash happens, civilian protesters from neighboring villages come out and try and help the militants escape from the military cordons. That is an indication of how the last year's unrest and the anger that's prevalent in Kashmir against Indian rule has not subsided. In fact, this has become a major worry for the Indian Army and the security forces deployed in Indian Kashmir, that whenever they launch counterinsurgency operations, civilians come out in solidarity with the militants and hamper their counterinsurgency operations. In fact, they have repeatedly expressed grave worries about this latest trend, this new phenomenon that is inside Indian and Desert Kashmir.
Pakistan's maritime security authorities have arrested 85 Indian fishermen for allegedly encroaching on Pakistan's territorial waters, with 14 boats having been seized. The fishermen were arrested Saturday evening and were brought to a police station in the southern port city of Karachi. India and Pakistan share an extensive oceanic border that is poorly defined. Fishermen from both sides inadvertently cross the frontier while netting their catch on a frequent basis. Last year, Pakistan released around 240 Indian fishermen in custody as a gesture of goodwill.
For the people of Lithuania, the Iron Curtain is made from pine. This, their border with Russia. It's wet and inhospitable, and the small band who patrol it are worried about the other side.
Every day, driving, walking.
Do you communicate with the Russians on the other side?
No, they're hiding.
They hide?
Yeah.
Right. This summer, the Lithuanians will draw a new line in these woods when they start building a border fence with cameras and sensors, as part of a plan to protect the EU from the east. Well, we are right on the frontier. Russian territory starts here, just a few meters away by the red and green post. And you know, for a lot of Lithuanians, that's just too close for comfort. The border guards, they're a bit jumpy, and the entire nation is anxious too. Lithuania is mobilizing for war on the border and in the company boardroom.
AR-15 is a civil version of M4.
We met two brothers who manufacture electronics. They've joined a volunteer army and agreed to show us their arsenal.
That's a typical weapon set that combat riflemen have.
It's all bought with their own money. And they told me there's another 10,000 men and women just like them. You'd be prepared to fight the Russians if you had to?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are prepared today as well. So if it would happen tonight, we would be ready. So there's no doubt about that.
The Russians might say, listen, you know, this is all, it's hysteria.
We are training for defending ourselves. So if they don't attack, they have nothing to worry about.
That sounds a lot like the generals from NATO. Member nations have shipped 4,000 troops to the region, with 1,000 German soldiers now stationed in Lithuania. But the conflict's already begun, it seems, although it's not exactly conventional. We've obtained this anonymous email sent to top officials alleging an attack by German soldiers on a 15-year-old Lithuanian orphan. At first, German soldiers just flirted, it reads, but then surrounded and raped her. The authorities say the email's fake, And when I visited the local orphanage, employees also told me it wasn't true.
I think it's a dangerous piece, and I think that they really picked on the right time and the right topic.
A clever way to create chaos, says the editor of the country's biggest news site, who knows plenty about cyber war. This operation is frequently attacked by hackers and propagandists and mysterious powders in the post.
I think we all very well know who's behind it. Kremlin is behind it, and we should just state it very clearly.
President Putin disagrees. He says the West is distorting reality. Still, many Lithuanians feel their survival's at stake.
It's whatever what it says, but the name is obviously fake.
And at a barbecue restaurant, we found a group called the Elves, fighting and fact-checking the trolls online.
Of course, it's not evenly matched, but it's more like David and Goliath fight, you know, but everyone knows how that fight ended, so...
It's all done in their spare time. Another example of grassroots mobilization.
If Russia will attack Lithuania, they will capture me and maybe kill me. But I think that if we do right things, we will avoid war.
Lithuania is preparing for the worst. A small nation, this, motivated by fear.
Cold weather and rain are not stopping heavy machines' work on the new layer of fence. Builders vowed to finish their work on entire 170-kilometer stretch of the border with Serbia by May 1st. And they've started here, close to the regular border crossing and also to one for migrants and refugees. Every day, authorities allow 5 people to enter these stainless steel revolving double doors into Hungary. Today, it was time for Bakshi family from Afghanistan. I've met them when they've arrived at the makeshift camp at the Serbian side of the border just the night before. It was beginning of the end of their 13.5 months perilous and costly journey.
When we started our journey, I paid for each family member $2,500. Then from Greece to Serbia, I paid $1,300 for each family member to Pakistani smugglers. Together with all the expenses I had in Turkey, Greece, and Serbia, in total it was $25,000 to $27,000.
Mohammed thinks that the money was well spent, since he hopes that in the EU they'll find peace and stability that he says was lacking back home. But for thousands that are following footsteps of Bakshi's, new regulations from Hungarian government and second layer of fence might prove to be an obstacle too much. This former school, full of stuff donated by Hungarians for incoming migrants, should be show of that there is a helping hand. Despite the public pressure from NGOs and civic society members, Hungarian government decided to press forward with construction of second layer of fence along the border with Serbia in order to try to stem further influx of refugees and migrants. But not everybody here in Hungary are against that government move, like people in small border town of Asotalom, who actually do support construction of that wall from day one.
That situation was completely abnormal because the state border was totally open, and this is not just Hungary's border, but the border of the European Union. In 2015, several thousands crossed our village every single day. They basically ruined our lives. People were afraid to leave their houses after dark.
Although he's one of the leaders of biggest opposition party Jobbik, Mayor Toroczkai strongly supports government actions in curbing illegal migrations. Something, what he says, that entire Europe needs in order to protect its identity. A position both shared and disputed by many in the EU.
Celebrating a first step into Europe, but still on the African continent. Hundreds of migrants, mostly from sub-Saharan Africa, last month breached the giant fences that separate Morocco and the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. Over the course of 3 days, 853 people made it into the Spanish territory. Almost half of the amount that managed to cross into Ceuta during the whole of 2016.
The relation between Spain and Morocco is the priority of the foreign policy of Spain. The Spanish and Morocco authorities have been successful to keep the immigration tap closed. Although we see, and I think this is like a demonstration that Morocco do once in some time to Europe or to Spain to remember that they have the key.
The recent mass breaches has caused huge concern amongst politicians here as they grapple to find answers to the issue. And although security measures are being re-examined, it's no coincidence that the Interior Minister, Juan Ignacio Zoido, has once again reaffirmed the importance of relations between Spain and Morocco. In Melilla, 4 fences separate the enclave and Morocco. But the Guardia Civil say migrants can break through this in less than a minute. It means that in order to maintain security, relations between Spain and Morocco are key. But some are not convinced. Yamani Edegami represents the Moroccan Association of Human Rights. He says that unless the issue is addressed at source, the migration flow will continue.
While serious social, economic and political problems exist south of Europe's border, I am convinced that whatever Europe does, there will always be a route, whether that's in Morocco, Algeria, Libya or Tunisia. This problem will always exist. Always. It's unresolvable if it is treated as a security problem, as it is at the moment.
The CM pilot vessel docked here in Catania, Sicily, brought in more than 500 migrants on Sunday, bringing this weekend's total of rescues to nearly 1,300. So far, Italian figures show a 57% increase in arrivals by boat compared to last year. With the higher number of migrants taking the perilous sea journey comes a higher number of deaths. The International Organization for Migration says 487 migrants have died in the Mediterranean as of March 2nd, higher than the 425 during the first 2 months of last year. About 500,000 migrants have arrived in Italy since the start of 2014. A record 181,000 arrived last year, but at the current rate, officials fear a new record will be set this year.
For Syrians in the city of Azaz, near the Turkish border, the biggest concern these days isn't their safety. It's the price of basic necessities, such as bread and diesel.
The prices are getting higher, the goods are fewer, we're being controlled by the traders, we're forced to fight.
Syrian government forces are advancing in the northern province of Aleppo. Soldiers have regained control of about 20 villages once held by ISIL. Perhaps their biggest victory is taking control of a highway near the city of El Bab. That highway is a major east-west artery that allows goods to be transported as far to the east as Raqqa, an ISIL stronghold.
The road is blocked for now. There are negotiations that will open it, God willing.
That means trucks carrying supplies are idling, and drivers like Farid have been stalled for days.
Our work has stopped and we'll lose money. What can we do? We'll stay here until the road opens.
It's unclear when that might happen. In the meantime, those living here are worried.
Today, a barrel of diesel is $122. There's a chance it'll increase to $130. The vehicles run on diesel, the bakery runs on diesel, so prices will go up.
People living in Free Syrian Army territory are trapped, while those living in areas controlled by the Syrian Democratic Forces have access to the highway. A spokesman now says they are linked across the northern countryside to people living in areas controlled by the Syrian government.
After suffering years of war, these children are on their own. Their parents and those who would have cared for them are gone. But this group of volunteers in the rebel-held Idlib province want to change that. They've set up an orphanage for 100 children to support, feed and educate them. The volunteers here know these children are the most vulnerable victims of the conflict, and they work to alleviate their suffering. Children who've lost only one parent here are among the luckier ones. Most have lost both, and despite the laughter, behind each face is a harrowing story.
We were sitting inside our home when we heard the sound of a plane. It dropped a bomb.
It killed my mother and father. Then my 2 sisters and I were brought to this orphanage.
Only a few have the chance to live within the walls of this house. Thousands of other orphans outside can only wish to live in a place like this. A place where they can learn, play, and forget the war that has spanned most of their lives. But the staff here don't receive any funding, and they're running out of money.
18 volunteers work here, and we all live here as one family. We treat the children like our own, but we face difficulties running this orphanage. Up until now, no organisation or charity has supported us. We have to rely on local people for all of our donations.
And without support, these orphans will be at risk of being homeless and alone once again.
And now victims of child sex abuse in the U.S. say that their fight for justice has been hampered by the political apparatus of the Roman Catholic Church. Victims in New York say the political power of the Roman Catholic Church and other institutions is preventing lawmakers from passing a bill that will relax one of the nation's tightest laws of limitations on filing criminal charges against the abusers. Church says the provision would cause catastrophic financial harm to any institution that works with children. Survivors of child molestation say that's no justification to deprive thousands of victims an opportunity to get justice. Supporters lobbied for the bill at Congress last week. They say that they hope this may be the year that the law is passed, making it easier for victims of abuse to sue and get some kind of recourse.
Rumours about what lay beneath this playground had been circulating for years, but confirmation that babies' bodies had been disposed of in an underground septic tank and a series of sewage chambers has appalled those living next to the site.
It's a lonely place and it's a sad place.
Jacqueline Warren's garden is on the grounds of the former home.
Is there babies buried in my garden? Do you know, I'm going to bed now at night and I'm wondering, is there babies down there buried in my garden? Yet, am I doing the wrong thing living in the house? You know, on a grave, you know? So what are they going to do? I'd love to see it closure.
Until it closed in 1961, the Tuam Mothers and Babies Home was run by the Catholic Bon Secours nuns. Unmarried mothers were forced here, exiled from society in shame. Their babies were taken from them. Many did not survive the hardships. There's no suggestion that the babies and children whose bodies have been found at this site were murdered, but their deaths were no less deliberate for all of that, the result of neglect, social exclusion, and chronic lack of medical care. And what happened here at Tuam was no isolated case. For decades, the Catholic Church and the Irish state collaborated to impose strict social control. But campaigners are demanding to know why the death rate at Tuam wasn't questioned.
The children's bodies that they've discovered, ranging up from 35 fetal weeks up to 2 to 3 years of age, some of whom would have died of starvation. How could that possibly happen in the 1950s and 60s, when the institution was being run by an order of nuns known for their expertise in medical and healthcare?
Only a few of the babies' remains have been exhumed so far. The authorities are yet to decide how to deal with the rest of the 796 children who are still believed buried there. Activists have compared the task to the exhumation of the mass graves in former Yugoslavia.
Loretta Lynch now calling for blood, encouraging protesters to help get the president out of the White House, even if it costs them their lives.
They've marched, they've bled. Yes, some of them have died. This is hard. Every good thing is. We have done this before, we can do this again.
Well, the former Obama Attorney General also using that video to accuse the Trump administration of trampling on civil rights. However, she failed to offer any shred of evidence supporting that claim.